All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everyone to this May 19th, 2021 meeting of the City of Charleston Planning Commission. The Planning Commission members are volunteers and they're appointed by Charleston City Council. I know you'll join me in thanking them for their work. I'll read off the members, since we're meeting by Zoom, the members of the commission for the record. Mr. Jimmy Bailey, Ms. Laquita Bryant Jenkins, Ms. Erica Harrison, Ms. Donna Jacobs, Ms. Angie Johnson, Sunday Lemphasis, Mr. Harry Lassane, who may or may not, I don't think he'll be with us tonight, and Mr. Sean Flug. And my name is Charlie Carish, and I'm the chairman of the commission. The way we operate is the city will read an item, the agenda item, into the record, or I'll read it into the record. The city will then make a proposal. Then after that proposal, they'll tell us if they recommend or not recommend an item. Then we'll hear from the applicant. Then we'll hear from anyone supporting the application and anyone who may be opposed to the application. Then we'll give the applicant a right to speak if they'd like to, with any concerns about the application. After that, we'll close the public hearing aspect of that, and there'll be the commission members will discuss, make motions, and vote on. I'd asked Mr. Morgan, Christopher Morgan, to, it looks like, introduce any staff that will be presenting tonight, introduce himself and any staff will be presenting tonight, as well as, I know there's one item that's deferred. Anything else on the agenda that changed? Mr. Morgan, I appreciate your help.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. So yes, just the one item at 3 and 5 Charleston Center Drive has been deferred. Staff tonight is, of course, myself. I'm planning manager at the City of Charleston, and Chloe Stuber is helping run the meeting. And then we also have Marcy Grant, who is our clerk. Philip Overcash is helping us with presentations. There will also be Anna Harp from our zoning division and Eric Schultz from our zoning division.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I appreciate it. We'll go ahead and start on the agenda. Number 1 is deferred on the rezonings. Number 2 under rezonings is 1505 Greenleaf Street, Silver Hill, Magnolia Peninsula, TMS number 46410000120-124 and 006. Approximately 1.42 acres, request rezoning of the subject property from heavy industrial HI to Upper Peninsula UP, and to be included in the 4-12-story City Height District classification. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a property in a rapidly evolving area of the Upper Peninsula of Charleston. As you can see in this image, when we zoned our Upper Peninsula areas probably 5 or 6 years ago, we were on either side of this subject property. If you all can see my cursor, here's the subject property, the L-shaped parcel here on Greenleaf. It has Upper Peninsula zoning to its south, all on the sides in the south, and also to the north along Greenleaf Street here, and of course to the west, the way this property wraps around it. But it was Upper Peninsula zoning at that time. It was adjacent to Upper Peninsula zoning. It was not included because we did not have requests from the property owner to include it, and typically we were just including things that fronted on Meeting Street. The idea was that as you get further away from Meeting, you still had some more industrial qualities, heavier duty industrial, like the Kinder Morgan facilities that are zoned heavy industrial, things like that. This is an area that has evolved. I'm going to point out a few things that have happened in this area. This subject parcel right here that I'm circling is now the new Quinn office building. That is a 4-story office building with a parking deck to the rear. The US Foods facility that's open to the general public is here. So it's kind of like a big wholesale food market facility. This is a storage facility here. The Jehovah's Witness have a worship center here. The proposal on this site would involve both this parcel that's already in the Upper Peninsula and this additional parcel for a mixed-use building. We are also seeing other mixed-use developments occur further to the north. The refinery facility is further up here, and all of this redevelopment is being spurred by what's going on in the lower areas of the peninsula, but also by what's coming from the standpoint of the bus rapid transit. There will be bus rapid transit coming down King Street, creating a very regular transit opportunity. Connections down at Mount Pleasant Street will be a major stop, and that's almost not a bad walk from this location. And there's just more and more interest in locating in these Upper Peninsula areas. I'll show you some aerial images here. First, we have where this subject property sits in our current plan, which is at Job Center designation. Of course, in our new plan, which is not in effect yet, and we're presenting to you all later this month, but it is showing as more of a mixed use area in the future plan, because we've seen this evolution that's gone on over the last 10 years. Here is the subject property on an aerial. You can see that there are industrial type facilities there. This aerial was taken before the new Quinn office building was built on this current paved area here. In addition to that Quinn office building, there's a Pepsi bottling facility immediately across the street from that has been bought for redevelopment into mixed use as well. And I think I have another image that you can see that from. So a whole lot of evolution is going on up here. Here you see the subject property a little bit closer in. Again, the property that's already zoned to Upper Peninsula is vacant. And then the subject property does have a commercial structure on it, a couple of commercial structures. And then here's the Jehovah's Witness facility in this location here. And then the Quinn office building and its associated detention ponds and things like that there. Here's another aerial view. And here is a ground level view of the subject property. Another ground level view, and another ground level view here. So gives you a sense of what's going on. So because of this evolution and the fact that it's got the Upper Peninsula zoning on both sides, staff has felt very comfortable with this request and is recommending its approval.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I tell you, it's amazing. I hope the people who are riding around up there, the transformation, the construction, the building up there is just unbelievable. It doesn't look like anything it did even 12 months ago, so it's unbelievable. Do we have, I guess, Mr. Gow or Mr. DeWitt, are they going to have a statement, Chloe?
Yes, promoting them to panelists right now.
Thank you, gentlemen. You'll go ahead whenever you're ready.
Hello.
Mr. Gow, yeah, thank you. We're ready whenever you are, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm representing a group that is purchasing this parcel, and they are working with the property owner to look at doing a residential mixed-use building and provide the workforce housing and all the components required by UP zoning. We have spoken with the city staff, Councilman Mitchell, Historic Charleston, Preservation Society. We had a good chat with Abby from 4 Mile Hibernian. She was excited to hear about more residential infill in this primarily industrial area. We did reach out to the Silver Hill Magnolia folks, and there's been some transition in leadership, and I spoke to Mr. Lester Aiken very briefly, and we'll continue to keep him apprised of what we're doing, and we'll speak to him before the council meeting. So I think this is a great opportunity for this very much changing area, and we're real excited about the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for the record, this is Mr. Gow, correct?
Yes, Richard Gow, LS3P. Sorry.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Gow. Chloe, I don't think anyone has signed up to speak in favor or opposed to this. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that'll close the public aspect of this. Commission members, any discussion, motions?
Move for approval.
Ms. Lemphasis moves for approval. Any other discussion or second to the motion?
I second Mrs.
Ms. Jacobs, you second the motion?
I think Angie was right ahead of me.
Okay. Ms. Johnson seconds the motion. So motion made by Ms. Lemphasis and seconded by Ms. Johnson. I'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Mr. Bailey?
Aye, in favor.
Thank you. Ms. Bryant Jenkins?
Aye in favor.
Thank you. Ms. Harrison?
Aye, in favor.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Jacobs?
Aye, in favor.
Great. Ms. Johnson?
Aye, in favor.
Great. Ms. Lymphosis?
Aye, in favor.
Mr. Flug?
Aye, in favor.
Great, thank you. And I'm in favor, so that'll be 8 in favor and none opposed. The next item on the agenda is under rezonings, is rezoning and plan unit of development, PUD amendment. Number 1, Shepherd Street, Canberra, Elliottboro, Peninsula, TMS number 4600404, 074, 078, 079, 080, 086, and a portion of previous St. Philip Street right-of-way annex, 1.453 acres, requested zoning of 84 Shepherd Street, approximately 0.67 acres from GB, general business, to plan unit development, Shepherd Street PUD classification, and to amend the Shepherd Street PUD development guidelines to allow up to an aggregate of up to 3 accommodations use units on 84 and 86 Shepherd Street. Mr. Morgan.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So again, the subject property is right here. You all are probably very familiar with this as it was before you in the last year, I think. This is a request to add an additional lot that a family owns, the Thompson family owns, and we'll let the applicants kind of explain their situation with adding this in. But this would allow for an additional 3 accommodations units within the development here. There's a new office building, I believe it's a 5-story office building that's nearing completion on the frontage along King Street. Then there'll be a parking area that kind of wraps around this building. And then there are other accommodations uses in older buildings that are being renovated. And now this building could be renovated and be part of those accommodations uses as well. The St. Philip Street right-of-way has been dedicated to this project because it no longer connects because of the Crosstown Expressway, the Septima Clark Crosstown Expressway. It is all part of the PUD as well. I'll show another image we have here. It's in our urban and urban core designation. So again, the types of uses fit within that designation. This is the subject property before the office building construction started over here along the King Street frontage. A house or two has been, I believe, moved around in here, and one of the newer houses has been demolished, but the applicants can explain that configuration. But all these remaining houses, historic houses, are being renovated with very historically appropriate renovations. You see here the subject property here on the screen, and of course the new office building that is going up in the King Street areas in that location. And here is the rear portion of the site that is now seeing the renovations go on with the historic structures. And here's some street view of the structures and the old St. Philip right-of-way that will be reconfigured. And this is the actual PUD layout with the mixed use area at the front with the office building and the subject property here. And then the accommodations cluster that's to the rear, although this structure that is in the middle here would be allowed to have also this accommodations use. And we are recommending approval because it's a small addition to this already approved PUD that we think is a good use of these challenging pieces of property in the midst of the Crosstown Expressway. The office building, of course, is a great new addition to the King Street frontage and helping to diversify our King Street frontages. And these accommodations uses are great use in the midst of the Crosstown, in an area where you probably are going to have less long-term residents interested in living. And with that, I will wrap up and let you all discuss it.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Is, I guess, Chloe, Mr. Wilson going to be with us tonight, or?
Yes, I've just promoted Mr. Wilson and Mr. Thompson to panelists. So Mr. Thompson, Mr. Wilson, if you could please share your video and unmute.
Thank you, gentlemen. You'll go ahead whenever you're ready. Thank you for being with us.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. My name is James Wilson. I'm with the Wobble Bond Dickinson law firm, and I'm here speaking on behalf of sort of part of the applicant group. I represent the owners of the property that's already within the PUD. Mitch and Taylor Norville are the individuals who are the ultimate owners. And then with me, as you also see, is Mr. Titus Thompson. He and his family own 84 Shepherd, as Mr. Morgan was describing. And so I think what we'll do is I'll just first share just some background information, and then after that I'll let Mr. Thompson can give you a little background as well on 84 Shepherd. Just to sort of set the stage, perfect. That's a perfect slide to be on there. So this property is, it's really sort of right in the middle of the crosstown. The ramp up to Interstate 26 is on one side, and the ramp down is on the other side. So it's somewhat disconnected from the neighborhoods on either side, the north and the south. And as a result, has really not been ideal for family homes. Existing homes have generally been empty for several years. Some have been used for student apartments in the past, and all of them have been in need of renovation. The PUD that was adopted last year by council, that of course was approved by Planning Commission, then adopted by council. What it basically did was it kept the same GB general business uses, but it moved the accommodations area from the front on King Street to the rear of the property, as Mr. Morgan described. So it essentially eliminated the accommodations used from King Street, but allowed it in the rear of the property. And the total number of accommodations units, it reduced from 50, which is what would have been allowed on King Street, to a maximum of 30 on the remainder of the property. As you've probably seen, the office building is well along in construction. And then the renovations of the historic buildings in the back are also well underway. We think that that's obviously a great thing for the city in a number of ways. This amendment really does two things. First and foremost, it adds 84 Shepherd to the PUD. So 84 Shepherd originally was not included, even though, of course, we were in communication with the Thompson family. It was not included just because they were still resolving things within the family in terms of ownership and title of property. But they have now, the Thompsons have now come and made the request to the city to have their property, 84 Shepherd, now added to the PUD at this point. So it adds 84 Shepherd, and then secondly, it allows a total of 3 additional accommodations units between 84 Shepherd and then the house right next door, which is 86 Shepherd. So these are basically 2 houses that would be renovated ultimately and allowed for a maximum of 3 additional accommodations units. Heights are not changing in any way. The PUD doesn't change heights. All renovations changes, of course, go through a regular BAR process. And then just as a big picture, we think that the new office building and the renovation of these buildings is a big positive. It's a small project, but we think it has a substantial positive impact. It's right at one of the entry points to the city. And finally getting these homes restored, we think, is a big positive as well. So with that, Titus, I will hand it over to you just so you can give a little bit of background on 84 Shepherd.
I think Mr. Wilson already kind of discussed everything in regards to just any concerns that we have. But first, I just want to just give thanks to God, and also give thanks to whoever's on this panel as well. My name is Titus. I'm speaking on behalf of my sister and my brother, Asia and Al Thompson. 84 Shepherd Street. We are heirs. We are heirs to that property, which we inherited through my mother. So it's been in the family for 2 generations. So with this PUD rezoning, it allows us to be able to kind of fix up the property to where we can still keep it, but also not be limited to whatever we want to use it for. So Really, I mean, there's really not much to say about the property in terms of what Mr. Wilson already discussed. We've just really been limited, and we've been working with them, and they've been helping us to be able to configure this whole rezoning to allow us, like I said, to be able to just utilize the property in a way where we can still keep the property, fix it up, and make it where it is a benefit to the city of Charleston, but also where we can also still be able to utilize the property, like I said. So, just thank you guys for being a part of this panel. So that's all I really have to say about it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wilson and Mr. Thompson. We appreciate you being with us tonight. There's no one signed up to speak in favor or opposed to this, so that'll close the public aspect of this this proposal. I'd ask commission members comments, questions, or motions.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to move for approval and just comment. I rode down there, to just view the property, and it really has been a big improvement, even in the mid-construction. So I'm excited to see what they're doing there, and I'm anxious to move for approval.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. I appreciate that motion. Any other comments, questions, or a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
All right, who's fighting over the second?
Mr. Bailey got it.
Okay, Mr. Bailey seconded the motion. So there's a motion by Ms. Jacobs, a second by Mr. Bailey. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Bailey?
Aye in favor.
Thank you. Ms. Bryant Jenkins?
I in favor. And I also just wanted to add it. I've been watching this project. I see it every single morning, and it's an amazing project that I am excited to see once it's all completed.
Great. Thank you for your comments. Thank you. Ms. Harrison?
I in favor, and I just want to just echo the same sentiments. Just like Ms. Bryant said, you know, I live across the street from it, and that pop of color that you see coming off of that overpass, it is a delight, and I really appreciate the hard effort that they've put into this PUD and making it really stand out at that in that area. So thank you very much for all that, your hard work.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. And to me, you're our eyes over there because you really keep an eye over there what's going on. So we appreciate your comments. Ms. Jacobs?
I in favor.
Great. Ms. Johnson?
I in favor.
Great. Ms. Lampasas? Ms. Lampasas?
I'm sorry, I in favor.
And Mr. Flug?
I in favor.
Great, and I'm in favor as well, so that's 8 in favor and none opposed. The next item on the agenda is under rezonings, zoning and plan unit development is number 2, Clements Ferry Road, the marshes of Cupper River PUD, Cainhoy, original TMS number 267000000. I think I enough zeros, 4, 005, 010, 050-057, 069, and 071. 36.09 acres. Request to amend the marshes at Cupper River Plan Unit Development, Master Plan and Guidelines into rezone property on Clements Ferry Road, TMS number 271-000-2153, approximately 0.15 acres to be included in the PUD, marshes at Cupper River. All right, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is out on Clements Ferry Road, the portion that's already been widened. It's directly across the street from the, I believe it's called Bose Van Allen Tech Facility and a daycare facility. And then there are nearby light industrial uses, and I'll show you some aerials that give you a sense of all that. But this PUD was approved, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. It was partly an annexation and is very active new house development going on here, very attractive layout here. It's unusual amounts of topography here in the existing area that's already been constructed. This amendment is about a very tiny piece of land, 15/100ths of an acre at the front of the development that they were not able to make part of the PUD originally, and now we're annexing into the city and can make it part of the PUD with pending your endorsement and city council. It would just add to the commercial site that's at the very front of the development. And it really just gives it the actual frontage on Clements Ferry Road. There was still going to be a commercial site here. This is not about adding extra density from a residential standpoint to the site. It just lets them kind of wrap it up and bring it out to the public right of way. You have, this is in our job center and suburban edge recommended site in the current plan, as it was, of course, when the PUD was actually approved. Here you see the construction going on in the aerial imagery. There's a large area of green space in the middle, and the subject property is right up here at the front. Here's the tech firm that's across the street. Also the Rebellion Farms, or it may have a different name now, is a fairly large development that's going on in Berkeley County directly across the street here. There's the potential to one day create a traffic signal in this location too, that this PUD could potentially line up and get to as well, which is a very helpful thing on Clements Ferry Road. Here you see the subject property, and you really get a sense of how small it is and how it really is just the undeveloped frontage here along Clements Ferry. In front of an existing structure, and also adjacent to a commercial use here and a commercial use to the north as well. Here's an aerial image of it showing Clements Ferry, still not, the widening still not finished. The widening is finished now. And here's a street view image of the property. It's at the front of where they have their, I guess, sales trailer for the PUD that is underway now. And here are the land use designations in this PUD, and you see the commercial designation up here. And our recommendation is for approval based on the fact that it's just such a minor addition, and it helps kind of complete it by bringing in that additional area between it and the right of way on Clements Ferry.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Is Kelsey Harper with us, Chloe?
Yes. And Kelsey, when you're ready, if you could please share your video.
Yeah, you go ahead whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Hi. I'm Kelsey Harper. I'm with Bowman Consulting, and we are representing our client who is the current owner of this very small parcel on Clements Ferry Road. Our client is also the owner of the directly adjacent 1 acre parcel to the northwest. It's currently within the Marshes at Cooper River PUD. We're in the very early stages of conceptual design, so our client hasn't quite settled on a specific end user or a specific use, but it will of course be within the guidelines of the general business zone of the PUD. So again, I really appreciate you all taking the time, and happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Ms. Harper, for your time and for being with us. I see no one signed up to speak because that closed the public aspect of this. So commission members, questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll move for approval.
Is that Ms. Harrison, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Is there a second? Other questions or comments?
I second.
Great. Ms. Bryant Jenkins is second. There's a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Bailey?
Aye, in favor.
Great. Ms. Bryant Jenkins?
Aye, in favor.
Great. Ms. Harrison?
I in favor.
Great. Ms. Jacobs?
Aye, in favor.
Great. Ms. Johnson? Ms. Johnson? Oops. We'll come back to her in a second. Ms. Lymphosis?
Aye, in favor.
Great. Mr. Flue?
Aye, in favor.
Great. I'm in favor as well. Ms. Johnson, you with us? If not, you might have to sign off a minute. That's 7 in favor and none opposed. The next item on the agenda is ordinance amendment. Number 1, to amend 54-604, development requires TRC approval of Article 6, land development plan review of Chapter 54 of the Code of City of Charleston zoning ordinance to update the list of development project types that require the approval of the Technical Review Committee, TRC. And I believe Mr. Schultz is going to present that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And
Can you hear me?
before we start, Mr. Schultz, I appreciate your work. I appreciate everyone that works for the staff. You'll all do a good job, but you seem to be everywhere, so I appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and also thanks to the members of the commission, as well as staff, for inviting me tonight to talk about this very important amendment. It's really the work of the committee, so I have to shout out to my incredible team and also to Scott Valentine, who got this ordinance in the form it is tonight to present it to you. Next slide, Christopher. So if you recall, when Mayor Tecklenburg was elected into office, one of the very first things he chose to tackle was to hire a consulting firm to audit or assess various city departments or city processes. And Technical Review Committee was one of the very first to be looked at. And this is just the cover sheet of the report that was presented to City Council in January of 2018. The result of all that hard work, they interviewed each individual TRC member. We met as a committee and discussed all the issues and opportunities about the TRC process. They went out and interviewed the development community. And as a result, they came back with 23 recommendations. And that's what you see there on the right-hand side of your slide. And we're going to tackle recommendation number 21, convene a committee to review threshold requirements for TRC site plan approval process. Next slide, Christopher. Thank you. Another great addition when Mayor Tecklenburg came on board was the bringing back of Tracy McKee as our Chief Innovation Officer. And she works very closely with our group, and we decided to prioritize our recommendations, and then we set out a schedule in which we would address the recommendation. And as you alluded to earlier, Mr. Chairman, the city is very busy. TRC is very busy, so we got caught up in a lot of delays. But as you can see here, we were going to try and tackle this in the third quarter of 2019. It got delayed to about the fall of 2020. Next slide. So the process, TRC begins conversations and analysis on the types of building projects that should require TRC review and approval. And what we've learned is, because we all come from very specific expertise, whether it's traffic and transportation, Janet Schumacher with ADA, we felt that some projects that did not require TRC were getting approved, but really all eyes should have been placed on that project. So we looked at existing city processes that do capture the approval of certain projects, but we came back and we settled on a few categories, which I'll discuss in just a few minutes. So those conversations were very productive, and we looked at the city and figured out where there was overlap and where there wasn't overlap. February 24th of 2021, we presented the draft ordinance to TRC University. TRC University is an opportunity that we do quarterly with the development community. That includes applicants, owners, developers, consultants, nonprofits, etc. And in COVID, it was done over Zoom, but in previous quarters, it was done in person. And it's an opportunity to hear from those folks. Basically, we welcome their gripes or their complaints about the process. We try and address those. We offer changes to our process, and it's very productive. So we presented the draft to TRC University in February. During the course of March and April, we made modifications, and I'll get into that in just a minute. And then here we are tonight presenting it to you all. Next slide, Christopher. So there's our agenda for TRC University. I just wanted to make sure that you see that we address numerous things, and that was on the agenda. Next slide. So the existing ordinance in section 604, basically you can break it down to having 6 categories of projects requiring TRC, and then there are 3 under B, 3 categories in which projects are exempt from TRC. As a result of our hard work, we're ramping that up to 9 under A. And you may question, oh my God, you're so busy today. How are you going to take on this work? Well, we feel that it's very important that the projects and the categories that I'll describe in just a moment do receive TRC. One of our mottos at TRC is that not only does the project have to meet required city code, but we strive for that project to be world-class in nature. We want it to be the best it can be, and every TRC member brings certain aspects and ideas to the review process to ensure that that occurs. Next slide. So here you have it in ordinance form. We hope that we get a favorable recommendation from you all tonight, and then it would move on to City Council. I'll just go down through them. Under A, TRC approval is required when number 1, all we did is changed that small little A2 to B, which refers to the section B, which I'll get to in a minute. Number 2, a lot of the changes, we needed further clarity. The previous language was a little vague. It was up to interpretation. So number 2 just changes and clarifies that a project that proposes an addition to a principal building or existing building where the footprint is 2,000 square feet or more would require TRC. So we added footprint 2,000 square foot. So this would not require a project that has an addition of 500 square feet, but maybe 4 stories, which would equal in conditioned space 2,000 square feet, would not require TRC, but we just tweaked that a bit to clarify footprint of 2,000 square foot. Number 3, as you can see, where stormwater drainage systems onto and off the site was scratched out, we kind of added number 4. I'll get to that in a minute, but Mr. Michael Mathis struggled at times, as well as other staff members, exactly how the existing language was interpreted. So any construction or development results in changes to traffic circulation, comma, internal or external to the development site, specific to changes to or additions to curb cuts, site access, and drive-through lanes. So again, we see a lot of buildings that are repurposed for maybe a Starbucks or something that requires a drive-through lane, and we see projects where they want to move the curb cut from one location to another. So we felt that we capture those type of projects. Number 4 is new in its entirety. And again, stormwater drainage systems in the previous number 3 had to be clarified. So again, working with our stormwater management department, we came up with number 4. So any construction, development, or redevelopment that requires a type 2 or type 3 construction activity application as prescribed in the city's stormwater design standards manual. So they're the experts. They felt that a lot of projects that were conducting land disturbance under that definition required TRC. Number 5, we just added some clarity to that. Basically remains the same, but zoning classification of a given site. So we just wanted to make sure that any additional proposed improvements to any PUD, any neighborhood district or Upper Peninsula district would require TRC approval. And as Mr. Chairman, you alluded to, a lot of the activity in the Upper Peninsula is in the Upper Peninsula district. So if a project is built and 5 years later they want to come back and change something that's significant, TRC will review that. Number 6 stays the same. Properties with restricted covenants That was an old zoning practice from the 70s and 80s, contract zoning, if you call it. There's very few parcels that have restricted covenants, but we still kept that in. Number 7 is new in its entirety. And this stemmed from the activity primarily in the Cannon Spring Street corridor. What we're seeing there is a lot of properties can afford additional residential units, and developers come forth and they were trying, I wouldn't say they were trying to beat the system, because we'll get to number 8, but they were dropping out a unit and then maybe a year later coming and adding a unit, and so on and so forth. So we decided it was important to look at these infill projects with everybody's eyes. So we added the language, any construction of a new building or building addition on the peninsula or in a area identified as a special protection area by the Department of Stormwater Management, which results in a total of 3 or more dwelling units on a single lot. So that's new, and we feel that's a good thing for the city on the peninsula. Next slide. Number 8 remains the same. This is where we caught those type of projects. It remains the same, single or 2-family dwelling unit construction, resulting in a total of 4 or more units on a single lot. So that's anywhere in the city. Number 9 is new in its entirety. With the half-cent sales tax projects run and managed by Charleston County and other city projects sponsored by the city, we were starting to see linear projects go through and get approved without all divisions and areas of expertise being having their eyes on it. So we added number 9. So any linear construction project specific to sidewalks, multi-use paths, utility lines, surface or subsurface drainage systems that exceed a continuous length of 100 feet or more, I think that should say, or requires a platting of a new easement, excluding construction projects in existing easements, except for those such projects may require construction activity approval. So this would capture, and it does capture, the Glen McConnell multi-use path, sidewalk projects around West Ashley that are, connecting Sam Rittenberg to Orange Grove, maybe by just a couple blocks. But we want to make sure that the necessary ADA ramps are in place and trees are protected and so on and so forth. So there was a number 10, and I just want to talk about that. It dealt with parking lots. We have a lot of non-conforming parking lots around the city, and oftentimes they start to deteriorate and become nothing but potholes, and they want to resurface and do things to them. And that was where we got most of the comments from our development community. And so we decided to pull that aspect, or that notion of any parking lot that went under reconstruction or had major modifications. And we're going to look at that because we found that there's a lot of conflicting zoning ordinance requirements with stormwater ordinance in the new design manual. So we'll come back and visit that, but we were happy to eliminate that from this amendment. And then under B, number 1, we just clarify dwelling unit construction not exceeding the requirements of section 7 or 8 above. So I thank you, TRC members. Thank you for your hard work. We get into all the details once you give certain entitlements to projects, and you are keeping us busy, believe me. But if you have any questions, I'll take them at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. I tell you, I want to again thank you, and it's obvious that y'all spent a lot of time on this, and it's so important that we modify these things as time goes on, and you'll see issues that come up. I think you're right on that number 10, though. I think there's so many parking lots that have issues, and the parking is such a premium here. That's an important item to look at probably separately.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I know there's probably questions or comments, and I knew right away my TRC expert, Ms. Jacobs, was gonna have something, so I'm gonna let Ms. Jacobs take over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I also want to echo thanks to TRC. They do a magnificent job. And really, when we look at these TRC reports at Planning Commission, the public is now beginning to see the hard work that TRC does for our city and its development. I had just a couple of quick questions to make sure I understand something. If you have an existing building on a site that's large enough to add an additional building, which might fall under the new building, not in addition to the building, but an additional building, is that covered under section A1? Does that
Yes,
cover that?
Yeah, any new construction, it would depend on the base zoning, obviously, and of course, the use of that building. So a GB zone property with a principal building, and then they want to add a building, absolutely, it would be required to come through TRC. Again, relative to residential properties, again, if it's new construction and it exceeds 3 units or more and is on the peninsula within a special protection area, it's captured by TRC. If it's elsewhere in the city and there's a principal building with X number of units and they add a building that's new construction to get up to 4 units or more, that would then be captured by TRC as well.
So that goes to my second question. If you have a lot that is subdividable, if you will, to make 3 or more units, but each lot is sold individually, it's not worked by a developer, does that still fall under this TRC review?
Okay.
Where he subdivides the land and then he individually sells that land, and maybe the land should have seen TRC review by some mechanism, but they're sold to just individual owners.
I think in that scenario, Ms. Jacobs, it goes back to what those now subdivided lots will be used for. If they're zoned commercial and somebody buys that lot and does a commercial building, absolutely TRC sees it. If it's a residential type subdivision and they subdivide it, somebody buys it and just puts a single family house on it, no TRC required.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Those are my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs, and go ahead,
Charles.
Ms. Lemphasis.
Yes, I have a question for Eric. In section 1, A3, construction or development results in changes to traffic circulation, internal or external. My
Yes.
question is, that sort of takes a huge latitude that y'all have to have the development community to have to do some, is it a mile exterior outside of the whatever the development is? It just seems a little vague.
Okay, so it continues on to say specific to changes to or addition to curb cuts, site access, or drive-through lanes. I hope
So
that may
that's-
clarify.
Well, those are the only items externally that this could affect?
Yeah, so again, I think where you're headed with that, so I'm just going to use the Crosstown as an example. We had a project over there that had a continuous curb cut, if you will. They were proposing to change the use. Therefore, they were trying to not do too much in the SCDOT right away to require maybe an encroachment permit. But the city was interested in having that continuous curb cut go away to specific, have a specific curb cut, designed and built. So that's external to the site. And we felt that would be a project that would require TRC.
No, I definitely think external needs to be considered in TRC, but I just wanted to make sure that the latitude was within a given scope and that you can't go 2 miles down the road and want, somebody to have to improve something that may be the responsibility of somebody else.
Oh, I see where you're going with it. So those type of improvements are usually spelled out in a traffic impact study when you do off-site improvements specific to a project. For instance, years ago, when the West Ashley Walmart was built out on Bees Ferry Road, that developer had to do turn lanes at the hospital at Magwood and also at another controlled access point on Glen McConnell. So those would be pulled out and identified in a traffic impact study. We're not asking people to go down the street it would be adjacent to the site, not a couple blocks away.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lephasis. Just for the record, no one had signed up to speak, or there was no written comments on this. I just want to read that no one from the public had signed up to speak. Other questions, comments of commission members or motion?
I have a question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Bailey.
And you teed it up there nicely. There are no, I note that there are no folks signed up to speak for or against this. But I am curious if there were substantive changes that occurred after the meeting with, I think you called it the TRC University.
Yes, sir. So we had very good attendance for that particular meeting. I believe we had around 35 in attendance. And again, that group ranges from consultants to owners to developers to whomever. And we actually, under the Scott Valentine, developed a little survey, which was posted after that meeting. And we gave them a chance to think this through and talk about it within their office or what have you. The only comments that came back were relative to our point number 10, which we withdrew. And it was, and maybe we hadn't thought that project or that requirement through hard enough, but it was about all these non-conforming parking lots around the city and people wanting to repave them or reline, strike them, add, little, whatever it may be, new handicap spaces, whatever. And that was the only comment or comments. I think we received 2 from that survey. And so we decided that when we really looked into it, that the zoning ordinance is conflicting with some of the new stormwater management techniques. And also Janet Schumacher with ADA receives all sorts of calls about, little asphalt ramps in front of curbs and not really being a true handicap ramp. And so we're going to think that through, but they were the only comments that we received. It was all about the parking lot aspect, nothing about these other points.
Right. Well, thank you. If there are no other questions, I'll move.
I might just remind you that I assume Mr. Morgan and others will be asking me to attend city council when it goes in front of city council for the public hearing portion, and we'll see what it possibly draws there. But all in all, I can truthfully say that the development community, I believe, we're in agreement. They're all trying to produce quality projects in the city, and they know the city is a little different from outlining in municipalities and how we run our site plan review. And we really did not receive any negative comments to the other categories.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. And that's an important piece. That this will go to city council. There will be a public meeting. So there could be, and there'll probably be a couple of readings of this, so there's public information. Mr. Bailey, yep. I think you were about to make a motion.
I do have a question, some questions.
Good, Ms. Harrison, you go ahead.
Y'all have done a yeoman's job on this, so and especially in the time of a pandemic. So you guys have worked extremely hard. One question I did have, and even though it's specifically defined in the ordinance, I didn't know if it would be, if the question would arise when we're talking about the projects that are on the peninsula when it comes to the term accessory dwelling unit, since that's now a new term within our ordinance, and how that would be perceived by TRC and its interpretation of adding an additional building to a site where it could result in 3 or more, especially on the peninsula. And then the other part was, as you kind of discussed, was the platting of new easements. And I'm presuming that it's, those public spaces, those multi-use paths, but I didn't know if that was also incorporating, like these types of PUDs that have have easements that are platted within them, or where properties join together, and, form a PUD or form, a horizontal property regime.
Right. So again, to address the linear construction projects, we're thinking, and I hope it is worded correctly, that it's not cross-access easements or any of that type of nature easement. It's specific to construction of an improvement that requires land disturbance, if you will. So for instance, Dominion Energy is proposing a major new gas line in the Bees Ferry area. If it's not within their existing easement and they have to do a new easement, then TRC would review that and look at that type of construction. Sidewalks are typically in right-of-ways. Multi-use paths are typically in right-of-ways. We do sometimes see easements placed over multi-use paths. But so I hope that clarifies that. That's a very good question relative to, we'll have to get with Mr. Lee Batchelder and Christopher to address the additional unit. I'm not sure how the accessory dwelling unit is defined. Does it count toward density or not? We'll have to look at that. I'm thinking in terms of a lot, and if it affords 4 units because of its lot size, and they're for market type rent, that sort of thing, then that would absolutely receive TRC. But if, typically, yeah, we'll have to look at that. That's a very good question, Erica. We'll look at that.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. Is there any other questions or comments from commission members or motion?
I think Jimmy gave the motion. I was going to second Jimmy's motion.
Jimmy, can you, I know, Jimmy, are you making a motion to approve this?
I move to approve the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Is there other questions or a second?
I second Mr. Bailey's motion, and just once again, really glad to see that this is being reviewed and streamlined and that the community is involved in it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. And TRC knows that Ms. Jacobs is always watching, so that's the key. So there's a motion.
I would like to reach out to you all, just remind you that the TRC meetings are open to the public. You're more than welcome to join us every Thursday. Hope to see you tomorrow morning.
No, thank you. And again, thank you for your hard work, Mr. Schultz. I've talked to you many times on different issues with the city, and you're everywhere. So I appreciate your hard work and all the staff. So there's a motion by Mr. Bailey and a second by Ms. Jacobs. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Bailey?
Aye in favor.
Thank you. Ms. Brian Jenkins?
Aye in favor.
Great. Ms. Harrison?
I am in favor.
Thanks. Ms. Jacobs?
Aye in favor.
Thanks. Ms. Johnson?
Aye in favor.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Lephasis? Cindy, you with us?
I'm sorry, Charlie, I in favor.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Flug?
I in favor.
Great, thank you. And I'm in favor, so that's 8 in favor and none opposed. Thank you, and thanks again, staff, for all the hard work on this issue. We're now at subdivisions. Number 1, Sanders Road. Roads crossing West Ashley, a portion of TMS number 286-0000001. I think I got enough. Approximately 22.377 acres. 57 one-family attached lots. Request subdivision concept approval. Zone diverse residential DR9. Mr. Morgan, who's going to speak on this?
This is going to be Ms. Harp.
Ms. Harp, you go ahead whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Good evening. Where's the echo? Anybody else hear the echo?
Yes,
Well, I don't know who's it coming from.
I hear the echo too.
Should be
Okay.
gone now. Charlie muted.
Thank you. Whew, that's better. Sorry about that. This is the applicant is requesting subdivision concept plan approval for 22.377 acres on Sanders Road in West Ashley. As the screen shows, they are asking for 57 one-family attached dwelling units and the construction of new rights-of-way in open space. The proposed rights-of-ways are typical of residential streets in the city of Charleston, and the new parcels conform to the subdivision requirements for the new parcels in the city of Charleston zoning ordinance. Christopher, can you go to the, there you go. So that gives you an idea where it is. There's Sanders Road and Beast Ferry up there and existing residential uses surrounding it. The next one, please. Oh, see, look, pretty pictures. So now we know where it is. It's like right now it's just wooded, vacant lots. Next. Okay. So this is these are all provided by the applicant. So this is an aerial view of the concept plan. And next. Thank you. So that is a concept plan. So they're, as you can see, they're asking for 57 attached, family attached dwelling units. Sidewalks are included with the subdivision, as well as along Sanders Road. And that is per section 54-381 of the City of Charleston zoning ordinance. There are wetlands on the parcel, but wetlands are not proposed to be impacted by this subdivision. The current zoning is DR6. DR6 zoning allows for single family detached and attached residential units. And as I mentioned earlier, the surrounding parcels contain single family residential neighborhoods. The proposed concept plan was reviewed by TRC committee, by the technical review committee in 5 different meetings. So it is, it has been reviewed extensively. As we know, the concept plan, it is just a concept plan. After concept plan, they will have to come back to technical review committee for preliminary plat and road construction plans. So based on all the reviews that were done by TRC, the staff recommendation is for approval with conditions. And if you want to move forward, Christopher, so these are all the exhibits from the applicant showing the existing conditions, the trees that are proposed to be removed, that they already got approval from Board of Zoning Appeals side design to remove some of the trees. And like I said, the approval from staff is approval with conditions. And the conditions would be that any road that is only 20 feet will need to be signed as no on-street parking or anything to that effect. A minimum of 27 feet of pavement width is required for on-street parking. And this comes from Stormwater, is the Department of Stormwater Management approves the concept plan only on the condition that the subsequent preliminary plat and road construction plans meet the minimum requirements of the city 2020 Stormwater Design Standards Manual. Approval, staff recommends approval with those conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harp. Chloe, who is going to present on this? I see several names listed.
Yes, I am promoting Dennis Willett, Tom Wallington, and York Dilday now.
Great, thank you. Y'all go ahead whenever you're ready. Thank you.
And if the applicants could please share their video as well.
Thank you.
York, you can go ahead and present.
Hi, this is York Dilday with Thomas and Hutton. I think Ms. Hart did a great presentation and she pretty much gave all the relevant information for the project. So if y'all have any more information y'all need from us or any questions, I'm happy to answer anything.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else going to speak?
No.
I see we have, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I have one question. On the 20-foot roads, are these roads private or they are going to be dedicated?
They'll be public roads, but they'll be greater than 20 feet. They'll
Okay.
be 26 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lampazis. I see no one's signed up to speak in favor or opposed, but there is a comment. Is Ms. Zimmerman with us, Chloe?
Yes. Katie,
Great.
I've enabled your microphone.
Hey
Ms.
there.
Zimmerman, you go ahead whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate the opportunity to comment. I wanted to ask if there was, if the applicant would consider, instead of a sidewalk, doing a multi-use path along Sanders Road. We've been working with the city and the county and adjacent neighborhoods. There's a great deal of concern by the neighborhoods about the ability of students to have bicycle and pedestrian access to and from the schools and the library at the end of Sanders. And children are coming from Bees Ferry Road as well. So they have really asked for repeatedly a better way for the children to bike and walk to and from along Sanders. So the city and the county together are working on a multi-use path segment from the end of Sanders to Half Shell Lane. And then we would love for applicants, as they're proposing projects along Sanders, to all do multi-use paths for their portions. So if that's something that you would be willing to consider, I would be very appreciative. And I know there are a lot of neighbors who would be appreciative as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zimmerman. Ms. Zimmerman, thank you for your work in the community as well. You're making the community a safer and better place with your work. So what we're going to do is there's no one else signed up this week. We have written comments, and then we'll give the applicant an opportunity to respond and answer that question. Chloe, do you want to read these written comments, please, into the record?
Yes, there are 11 written comments that all are similar to what Ms. Zimmerman just shared. So the first is from Rachel Eval at 2997 Conservancy Lane. Please add a multi-use sidewalk to Sanders Road from Bees Ferry to C.E. Williams Middle School. The sidewalk would provide a safe connection to biking, walking, running trails and parks from Village Greens all the way to the Greenway. This would be a huge step for walkability in West Ashley. Many residents would use this path to get to different neighborhoods and parks without having to drive. From David Bauman, 1824 Gammon Street, again requiring the installation of a multi-use bike walk path in lieu of a 5-foot sidewalk. This has future opportunity to create full walkability and bikeability from Bees Ferry Road to the schools on Sanders Road, thus reducing car traffic and improving safety for future students. From Stephanie Studeris, 1850 Bermuda Stone Road, again requesting the multi-use path along Sanders Road for folks to be able to travel safely from Carolina Bay to Bees Ferry. From Anna Gilpatrick, 1841 Corn Silk Drive, again asking for a multi-use path on Sanders Road, not just a sidewalk. They reference the high school, middle school, and library, as well as being a connection road for many adjacent neighborhoods that use bicycles, scooters, all with high population of children. And the multi-use path is the safest and best plan for the short and long-term future of previously neglected Sanders Road. We plan to use this road to travel to school and to shop at the West Ashley Circle. We've waited over 13 years for this. From Carol Fry at 3002 Memorial Drive. Families also requesting multi-use path rather than a sidewalk only. They live in Carolina Bay, and this road has become a major access route after the opening of the middle school. From Joanne Jasonek at 3185 Conservancy Lane, asking for a multi-use path for everyone's safety. Michelle Kerr at 1812 Luna Court, asking for a pedestrian 8-foot path is needed along Sanders Road in front of the development, not a 5-foot sidewalk. Bikers and walkers need to be able to safely pass each other and access a pedestrian path already located on Bees Ferry Road. A 5-foot sidewalk is not safe enough for the amount of bikers and walkers that need to access this area. Bobby Earl, 1757 Manassas Drive, lives in Carolina Bay and frequently uses this area on foot and bicycle. And Bobby appreciates the improvements that are already approved and coming down the pipe. However, I firmly believe the developer has an obligation to provide the safest features possible. That is why I'm politely asking that a multi-use path at least 8 foot wide along this section. We have the opportunity to increase foot and bicycle traffic between the large Carolina Bay neighborhood and the Bees Ferry, Walmart, Harris Teeter, Starbucks, etc. establishments. Increasing this to multi-use path will help facilitate that. Thank you kindly. From Jessica Allen at 1623 Pleasant Hill Drive, asking for a multi-use path for access to nearby library, schools, and Beast Ferry. Melinda Slider, 2810 Merriam's Drive, asking for a multi-use path on Sanders Road. And finally, from Abby Woods at 3009 Cooper's Basin Circle, saying it is imperative to obtain approval for funding from Charleston County multi-use path project along Sanders Road from House Shelf Lane to the new entrance to the middle school. This project will provide much needed safe access and connectivity between Carolina Bay and C.E. Williams, as well as new Beast Ferry, West Ashley Library, which has an abundance of bike parking on site, West Ashley High School, and ultimately the planned multi-use path along Glen McConnell Parkway. Appreciate the City of Charleston County for consideration of connectivity through West Ashley, and hope the committee votes to approve Sanders Road funding. So a little bit of confusion there, but same sentiment.
Thank you, Ms. Stuber, for reading those comments. Mr. Olet, would you like to respond to there was a particular question, and you can hear a common theme about the questions or comments. So would you like to respond as applicant to any of this or anything else you'd like to bring our attention to?
Sure. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. I'll start, and then I'm going to ask Tom Wallington, who also works for Beazer Homes, as I do, and we've contracted to purchase this piece of property and are working through the development TRC process. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So, we've looked at the requirements that are what's required along this, and it's a 5-foot sidewalk at this point. And when they talk about a multi-use path, we're open to options here, but when they talk about the multi-use path, I need to be careful about what we're saying yes to. When we look at the requirements for the 5-foot sidewalk, we have cross sections and we understand what that would take to put that 5-foot walk in. And so when we talk about a multi-use path and asphalt or 8-foot wide path, or are we talking about concrete? There's a lot of questions out there that we'd like to sort of get clarity on to see what we can do. We're also quite tight in a couple of areas where we have some wetlands crossings. And so we need to be careful about how we cross those areas and encroach into that area. And so 3 feet can be meaningful. Sometimes it's not, but sometimes it is. So hard for me to say yes to it right now. So Tom, would you have anything that you can add that would help?
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. My name's Tom Wallington. I think you're right, Dennis, how that comes together in terms of the construction issues. I think there's some details that we just need to work through on that. If it was part of the roadway improvements, it would be easier with the wetlands. But as you can see, it's within our property and outside the roadway. So fitting that through there in some of those areas is going to be difficult. But I think we do agree that it's good circulation. I think that part of it's true. And I don't know if there's any way that we can work with any other city projects that kind of would help us expand it to make it a bigger project, whether there's any offsets or anything along those lines. We have a lot of frontage for that is not really used by the improvements. So it is a big impact that we're taking on with the project.
Thank you. I know that y'all are meeting the requirements based on what Ms. Harp presented, but I'm sure the city would work with y'all. Ms. Harp, I don't want to speak for the city, and Mr. Morgan would work with y'all to accommodate these requests in any way they can. Mr. Morgan and Ms. Harp, would you like to comment on that?
I'll let Ms. Harp start.
I was gonna say, we would look at it when it comes when it comes back to TRC. That's when we would look at where the location is going to be throughout the entire project. Is it going to be certain sections? I'm not, once they decide what they're gonna do, then, their engineers will do the work as to what is required and what they would do. And it would be reviewed during TRC when it comes back.
Mr. Morgan, why don't you go ahead?
I mean, I would just concur with Ms. Hart, if the developer is willing to do this and go beyond, the basic city requirements, that would be fantastic. There's no doubt that this is an area that is rapidly changing, and this connection, which is as one of the commenters said, we've been waiting for a long time. It's been in a lot of city plans. The vehicular aspect is now open, but getting the bike ped here is also very important too. So anything the applicant would be willing to do on that front, I'm sure would be welcomed.
Great, I appreciate it. And I guess what the applicant was asking, maybe I'm wrong, is if the city could work with them on any other aspects of the development that may give them some footage. Is that correct, Mr. Wellington?
Yeah, and I think, it's somewhat relevant to our previous agenda item about a linear project. I know this is our frontage improvements, and, we want to do what we need to do, but the good thing about doing a wider 8-foot system is that it's connective and it's linear and it goes to other places. So I don't know whether there's language that we can come up with that we'll work together on as this goes through here. It might be that it moves to different places at different times as we go along this frontage. If we knew the land and limitations, it would be relatively easy to say we'll go from 3 to 8 feet. I think we're not quite sure what all the limitations we're going to run into as we go through there. And I just don't know if how we can put language that says everybody works together without knowing the details. But I know that we want to try to work on it and make it happen, make it be a continuous 8-foot pedestrian system more than the 5-foot. I know that sounds easy a lot when people suggest it. When the implementations come into play, I just don't know what we're going to run into.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Thank you.
Mr.
Why don't we
Chairman?
close the public? Yeah, we're going to close the public, Ms. Jacobs, we're going to close the public aspect of this, and then, so we'll go ahead and get commission members, and I'll recognize you to ask any questions or comments.
First of all, I'd like to thank staff for always being available to answer all my many questions on subjects of this matter. But I did hear Ms. Hart say this was zone DR6. Was that a mishearing? Because it's typed as DR9. Just a point for the record.
It might have been just me being fired and being late. I apologize.
No, for the record, I just wanted to make sure that I understood. Thank you, Ms. Hart. And toward the discussion that we were just having, maybe Mr. Morgan or Ms. Hart could help me here. Would it be possible since there are already conditions to this approval, that one of the conditions be to critically review the installation of a multimodal path in the project? Is that a practical condition to make, or does that cause some heartburn here?
Is it a requirement or is it?
No. What I'm
request?
saying is you've made 3 conditions already for this approval. Is it practical for that wording to add a 4th condition that to critically review the installation of a multimodal path with this project?
You can add that as a condition as well.
Okay,
thank you.
Then Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move.
Donna, before you add that, I'd like to, that's a tough condition that's being put on somebody that isn't aware and is not a requirement right now.
No, I just said critical review. That's all I said.
This is I don't even know what a multi-use is. I don't recall that having come up in very many developments in the past. And I guess this is the first, I think this is the first time I've actually heard.
Well, it's a requirement of all the Folly Road overlay for all redevelopment of all the property along Rethink Folly Road right now. It's this multimodal path.
This is a residential subdivision, and this is a unique one in that it has a lot of frontage. But I think that's putting a very difficult task on individuals that already had their planning put in place. And we're trying to come up with a requirement or a condition for them that they don't even know what they agreeing to, and we don't even know what we're asking for.
That's why I don't want to put a hard condition. I just wanted to put a condition of critical review.
But if you put a condition on, I think it makes, it's not to say it's a hard or not hard. I think if you make a condition, I believe And staff can tell me it is a requirement, becomes a requirement if it's a condition of the approval. But Mr. Bailey, did you have a question or comment?
Well, that's what I wanted to get some clarity on. I mean, I'd like to see the path happen, and I'd like for them to work with the staff on it. But they have met the minimum requirements, and so I don't want to force it on them, but I sure would like for them to work on it. I think that's what you were trying to suggest, Donna. Is that right?
Yes, I'm just trying to find a way to, because I'm looking at the comments that transportation made, and they're sort of suggestive in the TRC site approval comments, but not directly already. And they say things like the following comments will remain throughout the approval. And some of them are soft in there. They don't specifically say multimodal path, but there are already several comments that say that will remain through the approval of this project. So that's what I was bouncing off of, this buried in the TRC review process for conditional approval.
Other questions, comments of commission members? So Christopher, or Ms. Harp, Ms. Jacob, I think asked a question, said y'all could put that as a condition. My concern is, and again, I understand it, and I appreciate the fact that everybody wants a safer community to roam around in. And as Mr. Bailey said, they're meeting the requirements. I just want to make sure legally, if we put something in there and approve it, does that tie their hands? We know that what we want them to do, we know what's best, and I think they know what's best, but does that legally bind them?
I mean, I think if it's a condition, it depends on the wording there. We might need an attorney to interpret how that wording is handled, you know.
And what that means, the wording, yeah, it depends on the wording, because if you are gonna make it, that's why I was asking, would it be a requirement or a request? Because that would be, I think that completely changes everything, but.
Well, I don't think we can make a requirement if it meets the guidelines of subdivision request. I don't think we can make it a requirement.
I have a concern. I do have a concern about that. And you know, because I haven't seen where we've used that turn of phrase, Donna, and maybe you can just kind of help me understand. I understand the goal. So we understand what the goal is. I think the concern I have is does I understand what critical, you know, to you may mean, or what I would perceive as being critical, but I do think we walk into kind of this vague category of is it going to be a requirement? What is considered critical? And is the onus on them or TRC to create that path, because I know most folks, you know, on that development side, when they meet those minimum, if they're meeting that minimum requirement, they feel they have met that obligation and they want to proceed forward. And so by adding the concept of critical, I'm wondering if we're only creating confusion for TRC staff and putting something more onerous on the developer than should exist.
Yeah, because I think, Ms. Harrison, you're right. I think we're adding, if there's requirements and they're meeting them and we're changing the requirements, I don't think we have the ability to do that. I think we're all on the same page as what we'd like to see, but legally, what can do and can't do in terms of conditions and requirements?
Is there soft wording, Erica, that you might feel comfortable with that doesn't create an onus?
And Ms. Jacobs, when you say soft wording, I don't know how you,
I'm trying to somehow incorporate a condition, because even in the transportation part of the TRC, it says the following comments will remain throughout the approval. And there's several comments in there. None of them talk specifically about multimodal, but they do talk softly about multimodal.
I would think the only thing we could say is we'd requested the developer attempt to work with the city and the city staff to accommodate the request of the 8-foot path. I don't know. You'll tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I don't, you know.
Well, Charlie, I think that if that's something that we need to consider in any developments that have a certain parameters, I think that that needs to be added in our zoning ordinance. And not just put in on a development that already has applied, has met all the requirements. And we're trying to add something on. I think we need to look at that if that's an important issue. And I think a multi-use in some developments are going to be very important. But I think that's just unfair to do this on this particular application. And if that's something we need to do, we need to move forward with that in another meeting and change the zoning law.
I guess I'm just
Legally, we don't have the right to do that, is what I'm saying. I think the only thing we can do is request the developers meet the guidelines. Ms. Jacobs, you go ahead.
No, I'm just bouncing off the fact that we approved a transportation plan, like a year or so ago for complete streets. And I would think this would fall under that. So I don't know how that works into the TRC process then.
Well, I guess maybe Anna, I think the question is that for me, and I think maybe to give some level of comfort is, where they're at this stage, they're looking, they're obviously at the stage of an approval. However, is it possible as they progress through the process, is it feasible to ask them to reconsider and to closely look at this on a multimodal path and definitively say it's undoable for X, Y, and Z reasons?
But Ms. Harrison, I think you're right.
But I don't
Ms. Johnson, you go ahead.
Condition. So I think there's a request and there's a condition, but I don't think we can make a soft request. I don't think we can have a kind of half condition. Either needs to be a condition or not. I think they've heard what we have to say, but I agree with Sunday. I don't know that we can be adding this for this specific request.
I think we're all on the same page on this. Let me add, and that we all want to see the same thing. I just don't think we have the right to demand it. Is there a motion, other comments or a motion on this?
I'll move for approval with conditions stated by staff.
Right.
Sorry.
And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Donna, this isn't to not include yours, but my motion is to do what staff has presented.
No, I completely understand. I was just hoping that we could address the comments that have been made by everyone in some form or fashion, but I appreciate the understanding.
Great. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And the applicant is still on this, and they hear us very clearly, and I think staff hears us, and I believe if they hear us and they hear the citizens, that hopefully they'll be able to make some accommodations, and staff can work with them on some footage here or there to make that work. But there's a motion and a second on this. I'm gonna do a roll call vote unless there's any other questions or comments. Mr. Bailey?
This is Laquita.
Yes, ma'am. You go ahead, Ms. Bryant. Yes, ma'am. You go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment because this is kind of touching me near and dear to my heart as far as the need for the extra footage. So I am in support of what Ms. Jacobs has said. Also, I do understand the wording, and I know there might not be the soft wording that we can actually put in this. And I am hopeful that all those that are working to develop this community hear, like you said, what the staff is saying, because this is a important multi-use path that's needed for this area. And I hope that they hear us and can accommodate. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, ma'am. So, yes, ma'am. So we'll go ahead. Mr. Bailey? I'm sorry, I'm not on it.
I think he dropped off, Charlie.
All right, that's right. He said he was going to drop off. We had a motion, a second. Was Bryant Jenkins?
I in favor.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison.
I in favor.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs.
I in favor.
Thanks, Ms. Johnson.
I in favor.
Thank you, Ms. Lymphosis.
I in favor.
Great. Mr. Flug?
In favor.
Great, and I'm in favor as well, so that would make it 7 in favor and none opposed. And I think the developers hear us very clearly. I would ask staff that I think the point was, can we look at making this a requirement, as Ms. Lempus has said, it would only be fair that if we added into what's required, then that's something, you know, that we wouldn't have an issue with in the future on. So I'd like staff to address that and look at that in the future with the guidelines on this stuff.
Charlie,
So thank
Charlie, I'd like to
Yes, ma'am.
add that I don't want that to be just in every subdivision. I mean, it has to have, you know, be contingent upon where the property is. If it's on more of a commercial use, like Donna mentioned on Valley Road, and if it impacts other neighborhoods, you know, it's Carolina Bay is finished. They didn't provide anything like that for their people. And I think that we just need to look at it on a basis, but I do think we need to bring that to our attention and look at where that may fit and how we could add that in a zoning based on certain requirements. So I don't want it to just be across the board, Charlie.
No, that makes sense, Ms. Lampasas, because sometimes it may not fit. So I appreciate that. So we passed that. The next item on the agenda is zonings. Number 1 is 807 Savage Road, Castlewood, West Ashley, TMS number 309 15000 53 1.93 acres. Request zoning of DR 12, diverse residential 12, zone mixed style residential M12 in Charleston County. Mr. Morgan?
Yes, this is a recent annexation, and the M12 is most closely replicated in the city by our DR12, and it is adjacent to some pretty dense multifamily to the rear. So we would recommend for the M12. Here's an image of the current configuration on the property.
We can't take these zonings together, can we?
They should be separate, yeah, because they're different
Okay,
recommendations.
great, I understand. So there's no one signed up to speak on this. Is there a motion or from commission members?
I move for approval for.
Thank you, Ms. Lampasas. That number, you move for approval on number 1 zonings?
That's correct.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank Ms. Harrison, I think seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. I think Mr. Bailey had left us because it's his anniversary, and we appreciate him being with us as long as he was. Ms. Bryant Jenkins?
I in favor.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison.
I in favor.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs.
I in favor.
Great, Ms. Johnson.
I in favor.
Thank you. Ms. Lampasas.
I in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Flug.
I in favor.
Great, and I'm in favor as well, so that's 7 in favor and none opposed. The last item on our agenda, zonings, is number 2, which is 1453S South Edgewater Drive, Edgewater Park, West Ashley, TMS number 349 1300008, 0.47 acres. Request zoning of single-family residential, SR1. It was zoned single-family residential R4 in Charleston County. Mr. Morgan?
Yes, and with that R4, the closest compatible district in the city is our SR1, and we already have another SR1 in this neighborhood, so that is what we are recommending for. Here's an aerial image of the subject property.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Morgan, and there's no one signed up to speak on this. Is there, so that'll close the public aspect. Commission members, is there a motion, questions?
I move approval for Mr. Leolio, and I'm very happy that he is putting this in the city now. So that's exciting to me. So I'd like to move approval.
And I'll second that.
Great, so as a motion by Ms. Lampasas, and I didn't even realize who the applicant was, so I see that now. Motion by Ms. Lampasas, second by Ms. Jacobs. We'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Bryant Jenkins?
I in favor.
Thank you. Ms. Harrison?
I in favor.
Ms. Jacobs?
I in favor.
Great, Ms. Johnson?
I in favor.
Thank you. Ms. Lampasas?
I in favor.
Mr. Flug?
I in favor.
Great, and I'm in favor as well, so that's 7 in favor and none opposed. that finishes our agenda, and I appreciate everyone's time tonight. Chloe, can you, or Christopher, can you just, so everybody, I know we've had some future meetings or stuff coming up with the plan. Can you just refresh our memory on that for dates?
Yes. So what's going on? We had to shift ever so slightly because we kind of jammed up our graphic consultant on the plan with a whole bunch of stuff at the very end. So she is working through it all, and we will have a draft of the plan for you all. It won't be the final layout, but we'll have a draft of the plan for you all on Friday. We will send that digitally, although there were a couple of folks that wanted a printed copy, so we will deliver that to you. And then we will meet next Wednesday, the 26th at 3 p.m. for a work session. Questions, you all can hear from the public there if you want to, but it's mainly just to answer questions, have concerns, that kind of thing. And then we shifted when your actual public hearing and vote on the plan would be. We've shifted that to June 9th at 5 p.m. That's a Wednesday, June 9th at 5 p.m. And then assuming that you all do finalize the plan at that point in time, there would then be a joint workshop with City Council at some point, probably in later June, before the July 4th holiday week. And then City Council will take up the plan with a public hearing on Tuesday, July 20th. And that is the plan for the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. And I know, and as Mr. Morgan told me earlier, this is done every 10 years, so this is huge. And I know that y'all all go out and drink a cold beer or a glass of wine when this is done, because you work very hard on it, and I know everyone appreciates it. You gonna drink 3 glasses of beer?
Maybe 4.
Okay. All right.
Charlie, if I could, I did have a question. Because as Christopher said, the version of the plan that you all will be getting on Friday will have it's likely that a lot of the graphics will just be either placeholder graphics or sort of an empty rectangle, just holding that spot on the page where it won't have any information displayed. Because as he said, we overloaded our graphic designer at the last minute. So it will definitely have all of the text in there, all of the recommendations will be in there, but we don't know yet how much of the graphics will actually be included, with the exception of the land use maps, of course. We'll make sure that those are in there. Would you all, for those of you who requested printed versions, would you all still like that to be provided in print, or would you be interested in just a digital version this time around? So just want to do one last poll with that new information, one last poll of who needs a printed version.
I would like a printed version.
I'm very analog. I need to highlight.
I would like a printed version as well.
I would like a printed version to highlight text. I'm not worried about graphics right now.
Anyone else?
But I'm happy to pick up too, so.
Great. Thank you. So we don't have anything else. So wish everyone, it's still beautiful weather out there. I hope everyone, and it's not too hot yet. So I'll see y'all next week. So thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.